All right. Well, I'm going to jump into chlorine addiction. I think Matt will be back shortly. Um, so this one's kind of cheeky because it's chlorine, right? We all like chlorine. Chlorine's good. We have to have it. Ooh.
Hey, sorry, I was looking for a picture, and the thing about those little things that they're putting in the little sponges, I think those are really trying to be like a pre-filter because a lot of people were having problems with metals and stuff that year,
Hmm.
and someone came up on Facebook and said, hey, you can take care of it for $1 from the dollar store or whatever, and so a lot of people were trying it. But the problem is that those things would end up getting oxidized by the chlorine and then breaking apart and then causing issues inside the plumbing and the filters and all that stuff. So just FYI. Okay, chlorine addiction. I
The,
love this, the cause and solution to most all pool problems. We've been saying that for a while now, but thanks for putting it in writing.
that's right. So we'll go over the good and the bad. You're adding how much? That's kind of a fun one. Ready for something different and a whole pool chemistry. We've actually said that term a couple times today, and now we're gonna drive that home. So it's been around for over 100 years. It's what else? What else came out about 100 years ago that we still use today? Well, we've got cars, obviously a little bit different. We've advanced a little bit versus some of these open topped beasts. Airplanes, not traveling to trade shows in the Wright brothers plane. There's better planes out there. Shaving, a little different, a lot different actually. We've got like 20 blades compared to one. Um, every other gadget 20 years ago compared to today, what's in your pocket right now. So there's a lot of change out there. So pools back then, uh, maybe pools now. There was resistance when the car first came out. People saying, "Oh, I don't want a car, a horse and buggy forever." Um, horse and buggy. I mean, there's still some of them out there, but they're kind of a niche product now. Cars won. So uh, people always resist change because it's scary. It doesn't have to be. So we're gonna talk about different ways that we can kind of move on, not away from chlorine, but use it more intelligently and not to the detriment of the pool. Um, Typical pool care for the past 100 some odd years has been chlorine with a chlorine kicker. Now, what I mean by that is we run our pool with a certain level of chlorine in there, and that helps to maintain sanitation. That's all we need chlorine to do. We need it to maintain sanitizers. We want it to kill pathogens in the water, bacteria, viruses, um, parasites that can get us sick. That's what we need it to do. The problem is we need it to do this much, which is sanitize. We ask it to do this much. And it's the distraction of all of those secondary tasks that can cause us to run into issues with chlorine. So first version used was called bleaching powder. It was actually kind of a form of cal hypo. 1940s, gas chlorine or elemental chlorine actually started to get used for disinfectants in pools. This one's not used quite as much anymore just because chlorine gas is very dangerous and it requires extra certifications. And in a lot of instances, specifically in commercial pools, they required you to have a separate building outside and away from the other building to house the chlorine feed equipment, because they didn't want it in the other building for fear of if something went wrong, we would gas all of our patrons. Um, and in the 1950s, stabilized chlorine, so dichlor and trichlor, those came available and in ready use in the 50s. Since then, there hadn't been a whole lot of evolution on chlorine. It's pretty much hung out there. There's been different tweaks and different versions, but the base ingredients are still trichlor and dichlor. They might have some additives or some things subtracted or moved around. But why did we stop there? People just got comfortable, readily available. So like I said before, what we need chlorine to do is here. Take care of these things. Take care of the things that can get us sick. We ask it to do all these other things. And just so you know, all of these other things here can be accomplished either with other chemical programs or mechanical systems. So there's no reason why we can't take a lot of the workload off of chlorine and actually run a lower chlorine and actually still have a healthier pool, which is kind of fun. Excessive chlorine is less than ideal. I love this picture. I actually took this one a year or so ago. That is from a covered pool in Indiana that had a saltwater system. So, fun thing about chlorine, whenever you're using it, you actually generate chlorine gas. If it's trapped under an auto cover, it doesn't have anywhere to go. So it just hangs out. So if you think about how an auto cover works, you've got a little pocket on the outside edges where all that gas is just building up. And if you don't burp the cover every day to let those gases off, they're just going to hang out and build up. That can actually cause premature wear and tear on your liner if it's a liner pool, equipment, the top track, the rails for your auto cover, the vinyl for the auto cover, anything that gas can touch. In this instance, this used to be a chrome bullnose. This used to be a chrome fitting. There might be chrome under there, but it's not looking too chrome anymore. So chlorine is distractible and indiscriminate. It's going to go after anything it can attack. Stabilizer issues. If you're using stabilized chlorine like trichlor or dichlor, and when I say trichlor, you see it as like granular shock, 15 and swim a lot of times, or which is dichlor shouldn't really be used as a shock, or trichlor is typically your 3 or 1 inch tabs that you use in pools. Once you hit a certain point of cyanuric acid, it's actually detrimental to what your chlorine can actually do in the water. And it's also causing balance issues when you're testing. Matt?
55. 55 is the magic number for cyanuric acid.
And equipment warranty
That's
issues.
What this was. 5.
I thought you were saying 5 minutes. I'm like, my God, I've been going slow. Equipment warranty issues. So we'll touch on this a little bit further down, but your equipment warranties and your surface warranties and everything in between has a pretty narrow range of where it wants your chlorine. So the chlorine kicker could potentially put you out of warranty if you've had issues. And extra additives. Do you know what else you're adding when you're adding your chlorine? We actually did a separate class on this last year in the spring training. If you want information on that, shoot me an email after this. I'm happy to share it, because when you're adding any pool chemical, you're not just affecting that one thing that you're trying to affect with it. You're actually having other effects on it. So like if you had trichlor that has a pH close to 3, you're bringing the pH and the alkalinity down constantly. So you have to correct for that too. So different weird things to think about. And this is a good way to learn more to be the chemical pro in your store. See, bringing it all back. Unintended side effects of chemicals, harmful byproducts. So the chlorine gas or the chloramines, which is chlorine that got tied up and used up, that can cause respiratory issues and actually prematurely wear down equipment pieces. Excessive stabilizer, that you can't get rid of it. There are some chemicals that'll say they do reduce it, and some mixed results from people that have played with it in the field, but still the easiest way is to drain and refill. pH swing. What's your chlorine doing to your pH? So we said trichlor has a low pH. Matt, go ahead and unmute, because I'm going to ask you where your cal hypo and where your liquid chlorine pH level is.
Oh, thanks. Okay.
Yeah.
So cal hypo, the pH is just under 11, and liquid chlorine is just over 13. So that may not seem like a big deal because we're talking about a scale of 0 to 14, with 7 being neutral. But the thing is that every number is exponentially higher. So 8 is 10 times more base than 7, where 9 is 100 times more base, 10 is 1,000 times more base, 11 is 10,000 times more base, which is where that is. And then 12 is 100,000 times more base, and 13 is 1,000,000 times more base. So when you're dealing with something like liquid chlorine and you're putting something that's 1,000,000 times more base than what the water should be, or right around there, essentially you're saying, okay, well, if you put in 1 gallon of something in 10,000 gallons and the pH is that high, that's why it affects the pH of the whole pool.
Yep. And what we saw the last couple of years,
same with acid, right? Same with acid, but the other way.
When different types of chlorine weren't as readily available as they had been in the past, so people were switching from trichlor tabs over to other types of chlorine like cal hypo or liquid because they could get them a little easier. Trichlor has a low pH. Both liquid and cal hypo have a high. So if your truck's set up to run trichlor pools, you probably don't have the balance chemicals that you're typically going to need if you didn't take that into consideration. So high levels of chlorine can actually break down staining scales. It can destroy enzymes. It can make clarifiers less effective. Like we talked about in the testing, it can make your test results not as effective or not as believable. It's hard on surfaces and equipment. It can cause premature wear and tear. So obviously chemistry was a factor here. There's a giant brass impeller on a big commercial pool. It's not just your backyard pools where this is a big deal. This affects every pool out there. So if you don't do the right things to take care of your water chemistry, you can run into issues like this. Do you know how much you're adding? This is a fun one because this blows people's hair back. In a 10,000 gallon pool, which actually isn't out of the realm of possibility because with so many fiberglass pools out there now, 10,000 is kind of right in the middle of those. 1 gallon of liquid chlorine adds 10 parts per million of free chlorine. Let me say that again. 1 gallon of chlorine adds 10 parts per million. So I've been out on job sites where I'll see people adding a full case. So even if it's a 20,000 gallon pool and you're adding a full case, 20 parts per million, you're way overshooting anybody's warranty requirements and probably causing other issues at the same time. Cal Hypo adds about 8, dichlor adds about 6.8. So this kind of illustrates why we always say dichlor isn't really a shock because you're adding a bunch of cyanuric acid and you're not getting as much of the benefit as you could if you shocked with chlorine shocked with liquid chlorine or Cal Hypo. So we talked about warranty. Where do the certain manufacturers want warranty levels? Well, liner manufacturers like between 1 and 3 parts per million. Man, that's a lot less than that 1 gallon we just added to that pool, isn't it? Sure is. They start getting nervous at about 5. So, and I've done this at different trainings where I've asked the crowd. It's a little bit harder in here, but who's ever had a warranty claim denied because of chemical imbalance? And almost every hand should probably go up. It's not just a MacGuffin. It's not something that the manufacturers put in there as a get out of jail free card. If your chemistry is out of whack, it's absolutely doing damage to everything the water touches, even the people. And that's kind of a big one. Auto cover levels pretty similar to liner because they have a lot of the same materials, a lot of vinyl in there. A lot of them even specifically say do not chlorine shock your pool and close your cover because you're trapping those gases like we talked about in there, which is going to prematurely wear out the auto cover, whatever pool surface you have, and all of the metal equipment parts and pieces that make that cover up. So they specifically call out to use non-chlorine shocks, which is a little bit less. Actually a lot less aggressive than what you get when you're doing it with chlorine. Different equipment chlorine levels specifically look at like heaters and salt cells and weird things like that. Everybody's got different criteria in there, and ask your specific equipment reps where they want their levels, but they all fall right around that 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. Nobody really goes much further than that. So there are better ways to accomplish these goals other than chlorine. Like I said, the last couple of years was very different, and what was neat about it is it actually forced people to kind of look at what they'd been doing and change things up a little bit. Because chlorine with a chlorine kicker, chlorine or bludgeon the pool with chlorine if you've got problems, that wasn't really available because you couldn't get as much chlorine as you wanted to take care of things the way that they had historically done. So people started looking elsewhere and they found ways to finesse their water rather than just bludgeoning it. And a lot of times the water quality got better. So people have kind of shifted how they're doing things because you can finesse it a lot easier than bludgeoning. Just a slightly different way of thinking about it. You're accomplishing the similar goals, if not the exact same goal, and keeping the water healthier. Matt?
So there's something to think about right here too. We're talking to the bulk of people on this class are retailers who have retail retail stores, retail personnel, and everything else. And if you think about, say, like liquid chlorine or Cal Hypo or shock in the generic term of shock, we're going to talk about how shock is a verb, but think about the generic term of shock where people can buy a shock product. I put air quotes on that at a big box store. But think about how many people, especially for you in the upper tier of the country, meaning the north tier, how many people buy liquid chlorine all over the place. And we know in certain areas of the Midwest, we're talking about millions of gallons, millions of plastic gallons that are sold in states, right? More than a million in a state. And the problem is that I could say the problem, but they're not just buying it from pool stores. They're buying it from big box stores. They're buying it from gas stations sometimes, all kinds of stuff. And so if your answer to every problem is, well, add more liquid chlorine, that goes back to what we were talking about in a different class where you're pretty much saying, well, why not buy some Arm & Hammer at Kroger, right? So this is something that you have to think about to prolong the life of the sales success of your store. And that, well, what's something else that I could sell someone to fix this problem they can't buy at Menards, right? And I'm not picking on Menards. I'm just, a big box store. So that's something to consider too. There's definitely more ways to skin a cat than just using more chlorine, which you can find anywhere.
Yep. Don't train your customers to not come back and see you. And if you can provide a pool experience that gives them a better experience, a longer life on their pool surfaces and equipment, and a better feel when they're in the water, that's what sets you apart. That goes back to the previous slide. What makes us better than our competition? That's a gimme right there. Are we using the wrong tools? So using a hammer on a screw or a screwdriver on a nail, you might be able to accomplish tasks that way, but it's going to be a lot harder, and there's going to be side effects from doing that. Um, so like, I mean, we just don't train your customers to not come back and see you. You really want to, because I've been in stores where 4 different people came in with 4 different chemical issues, one after another, and the thing that the it was a new staff member behind the counter said every single time, put a couple cases of chlorine in there for every single problem, when there was a different way to accomplish it, and actually a little better. Um, yeah, that's where the training comes in.
And you'll find everyone that deals with competition from national chains that they have pretty much one answer for everything too, and it's not liquid chlorine. So that's something that probably a lot of you have come across too, right?
So industries are evolving to provide better services, like we talked about, changing dynamics. We want to provide a better experience for the end user. You wouldn't have as good time driving a Model T around right now as you would driving a Ford Edge or some other brand new car that actually has a roof that wouldn't be terribly cold in the wintertime. Wanting to improve, avoiding stagnation, necessary changes, things to set the industries apart. We need to embrace those growths. Cars, razors, planes, phones, pools, and spas. You ready for something different? Pool people are. Here's a couple examples of where they've already jumped on board. Single speed versus variable speed pumps. Better performance, energy efficiency. Awesome. Manual versus robotic cleaners. Nobody likes vacuuming their pool. It's a pain in the butt. Incandescent versus LED lights. They're brighter and more energy efficient. There's no downside. It's awesome. Heaters versus heat cool pumps. And for those of you who are in cold markets like me, heat cool doesn't come up that often. But if you're in Florida or in the Southwest where it's ripping hot a lot of the time, you might want something that can make the water colder. Definitely cool. Chemicals, heck yeah. Here's where we're getting excited, because we get to get back on chemical part. New products come about because people and market demands. Examples: biguanides in the 80s. People wanted something that wasn't chlorine heavy. They blew up. They went crazy. They went all over the place. Um, Programs, they're still out there from those bases that were set up in the 80s. People are still on those programs because they got behind it, they trained their staff, and they got their customers on it, and they built customer loyalty, and those customers keep coming back to see them. See how the programs can build and make your life easier, because you get them on a program, they come back to see you every year. Less work you have to do because you're not having to troubleshoot, because you're proactively troubleshooting, taking care of issues before they even happen. Oh, water chemistry. It's not just for the water, it's for the whole pool. Everything the water touches. Everything the water touches. That's why we put some fun horror show pictures on here. So scummy grossness because the soccer team came by and played. Good Lord, there used to be a liner there. Not so much anymore. This salt cell only had 6 months worth of use on it. Yeah. I bet you there's some people out there who say, yeah, that is a pretty spa, isn't it? That's gross. um, and then this was actually a dealer
Hey, by the
who,
way, that's the fill water,
yeah,
Derek. That spa is just
out
the
the
fill
tap.
water from the hose. So when he was talking before about challenging homeowners to bring in their fill water, that's what we're talking about, right? Because you never know what they're putting in there, especially if it's an autofill.
This one
Keep
was
going, Brad.
this one was actually a teaching experience, because there was a service company that they added liquid chlorine to the pool, and you can almost see exactly where they added it while they were walking around. They had a high metal content that they'd used a staining scale to keep in solution. Well, when they added the liquid chlorine, it nuked the staining scale, which caused the metal to come out of solution, which caused the Mountain Dew color. That happened in 5 minutes, and he was actually on site and took a picture of it. He was like, "I just took this pool over, and I have no idea what's going on." I was like, "You got metals, baby. We can fix it. Don't shock it right now." And he's like, okay. So
So think about that based on one of the previous slides too, when you're talking about how people started off with biguanides back in the late 80s and they got super popular in the 90s, and there's still people on it, and they call you to come fix it. You don't know they're on biguanides. You put in liquid chlorine, and next thing you know, instead of it looking like that, it
you
looks like
got
a brown lake,
got gummy
right?
boogers too.
It's terrible. Yeah, yeah.
So chemistry for the whole pool. You're not just taking care of the water, you're taking care of everything the water touches and the people that are in there. And I keep saying the people in there because safety shouldn't be a hard sell. You put a pool in, hopefully people are trying to do it the right way and keep themselves safe. Um, so certain tasks that we ask of chlorine can be performed easier by other products, and in some instances better, and a lot of instances better. Multifunction products perform several roles with fewer side effects. So if you can add one thing that takes care of 5 or 6 different issues, you should look at those because it makes you more efficient. It makes it easier for your homeowners to take care of their pool. And finesse your water. Don't just smack it. Stop abusing your water. It doesn't like it. Nobody does. Ready to change? Let's set some trends. This all starts on the retail level because people come to you because you are the experts. They want to hear your opinion. They want to know what you do, what you believe in. Find different ways to use products that are out there. Find different products that work better for you in your market. I know I'm in a market that's got really high calcium. Matt's in a market that's got really high calcium. If there's products out there that can keep that calcium in solution, or maybe remove some of the calcium carbonate so it can't form scale, awesome. Speaking of that, Revive, kind of a fun one. And I'm getting into the shameless plug part here because we've got some stuff that makes it a lot easier and it can keep people happier and coming back to see you in the store. Revive is an indiscriminate water cleaner. It goes after everything it can grab a hold of. So scaling carbonates, stray metals, so stuff that's coming in from well water. If you've got gross stuff, that spa that had that really gnarly color right out of the tap, Revive or Easy Spa Start, which is hot water Revive, could help with that. You can do maintenance doses to keep up with it. If you've ever had a pool that actually needed to use Revive, you should sell them Revive weekly. It's the same chemical. It actually takes care of the issues gradually over time rather than letting them build up to the point where they actually need to troubleshoot. So here's your ounce of prevention. Here's your pound of cure. Here's your multi-pound of cure for when you're on the service route and you don't want to have tons of bottles in your truck. Different ways to address water care. So I said multifunction products. So if you've got something like Easy Pool, that's an algicide, stain and scale clarifier, balancer, and non-chlorine oxidizer built into one, that makes a lot. It makes a lot of sense. It takes a lot of those weird guessworks off the table because if you're taking a multivitamin and addressing the common problem causers in most of your pools, you have fewer problems. Pepper, tweaked version of Easy Pool. For your salt people out there, I love this one, and I'm going to tell this story till the day I die. I was in a retail shop, and a customer came in and said, I don't have a chlorine pool, I have a salt pool. And I know all you know that a salt system is a chlorine factory on your pool that's just generating chlorine. You buy one less bucket a year because it's making the chlorine and you're not buying tabs or cal hypo or whatever you're using. The same stuff that you have to do balance wise and chemistry wise to take care of a salt pool is the same stuff you have to use to take care of an irregular pool. So we took the common things that you take care of most pools with, specifically salt pools, and put them into one bottle because it's a lot easier pill for them to swallow. Because if you're at the retail shop and they come in, I've got a salt pool, they've already got it built in their head that I'm special, I'm different. You want to let them keep thinking they're special and different because if you tell them I need to sell you 5 different things so you can take care of your pool, that customer in that instance said, you're trying to sell me more stuff than I need. I don't need all that stuff. So we built it all into pepper so you could say you've got salt, don't forget the pepper. It checks the boxes for most of the things that they need to take care of in their salt pool. It's an easier pill to swallow, they leave happy, and it makes the pool easier to run. um, that's pepper in a nutshell. Oop. Because we know not everybody functions the way that we like and operates proactively, OxySplash is our non-chlorine oxidizer. It's just a straight non-chlorine oxidizer. Matt has a pretty hat. It actively prevents chloramines from forming. It's your troubleshooter. So if people have a need to shock for any reason other than algae, use OxySplash. It's super concentrated, 8 ounces per 10,000 gallons versus a pound of traditional non-chlorine shock. So that 25-pound bucket right there is the equivalent of a 50-pound bucket. The 2-pounder that we've got is the equivalent of a 4x1 of liquid chlorine shock. So if you're talking about saving space in your warehouse because you can't keep bringing in all this liquid that's messy and spills and we have to pay for a couple car back seats every year, start looking at other things that make you more efficient and make you a little bit different and
especially
set
if
you
they
aside.
have a cover.
Yes. And any kind of covered
Yes.
pool.
Yeah.
Because we
Because
off
like what
gas
Brett was
is
saying,
oxygen.
this is the biggest thing about OxySplash is number one, it is pH neutral, and number two, it disrupts the formation of chloramines. So when you're using this, you don't have to worry about combined chlorine gas with the auto cover, all that stuff. This is great stuff for that. All right, sorry, Brett.
Oh, you're good.
We're actually 1 minute over, so you need to wrap it up.
Ezyme Pro. It takes care of pool pudding and body butter that gets in there. So oils, lotions, sunscreens, that sort of thing. It breaks it down so that it doesn't build up in your filter media, on your water line, or in your it's just in the pool in general. If you've ever had someone who jumps in the pool after putting sunscreen on and you get that rainbow oil slick over the surface, you need to use an enzyme product. Ezyme Pro is chlorine resistant, so it can put up with people still bludgeoning their pool, and it can last longer, give you a little bit more margin for error. There's that. Thank you.
Hey, just one of the great things about Ezyme Pro too, if you guys haven't thought about that, especially for everyone in the northern tier of the country, is that this stuff is actually strong enough that you can use it for cleaning covers, cleaning filters, cleaning out the inside of pipes, all kinds of stuff. So it's not just helping to break down organic waste in the water, which is very important, but you can also use it for so many other things. We even have dealers that are using it for pressure washing. So
Yep.
it's a very versatile product, and it's really, I think it's the only one or one of the only ones that actually lasts up to 8 parts per million of chlorine, where all the other enzymes that are in the market, all the regular pool enzymes, start to break down at 4 parts per million. So that's something to consider too, especially if you're putting this on a weekly dosage, or in with a shock or anything like that, or if you have typically a high chlorine pool, you'll need something that actually lasts longer than high chlorine.
Yep.
All right.
Cool.
So, hey, you know what? There are so many things that we could have gone down the rabbit hole on in the last 2 or 3 classes that I'm sitting here going, and I go, never mind. I just can't do it because we're trying to make these for 25 minutes. And so if you're taking notes, which hopefully you are, save them for the very end. And that way, when you guys put the stuff in the chat, we can go down as much of a rabbit hole you want, because the last class is an open-ended class. And so that way we can discuss anything that's come up, anything you need to know, anything you need to, that you wanted to know more of that we went by pretty quickly so far. So with that, what we'll do is we'll give you a couple minutes to go do your thing. We'll start this up at the bottom of the hour. And again, we just want to thank you so much for being here. And if you need anything, you can always text us or call us at 877-274-7261. Stacy will put that number in the chat, so that way you can jot it down. That's our hotline number. You can call or text there. Okay. Thank you.
See you soon.